Good morning. Welcome to Senior Topics. Today is July 27, 2020. Who would have thought it'd be July already, but it is. And I'm recording. My name is June Edwards. I'm your adjunct instructor. And we're going to look at the last week of events for July. I see that on the 23rd was ice cream cone day. And I don't know about you, but when this weather gets really, really hot, a cup or a bowl of ice cream just sounds so good to me. Or even an ice cream cone. You know, the cones were introduced in 1904, so they've been around for, 116 years or so. I think I got my math a little bit on that. I think it's right. On the 24th, Amelia Earhart Day. And she was the lady who flew all over the world setting records back in the 1930s. And then her body, mysteriously, she disappeared over the Pacific Ocean on a mission during World War II. And I think that recently they have found her plane and they're doing DNA testing, and I think they will confirm that, yes, that is her body. And then on this date, in 1958, NASA, the National Aeronautics Space Administration, was established. And then about 10 years later, we had a man on the moon. And what I'm hearing is that our new Space Force, combining with private people like Elon Musk and others, are going to have craft going and establishing a colony in Mars sometime in the 2020s. The other thing I want to tell you is that this is National Ice Cream Month, not only celebrating ice cream cones, but to drive the point home, they said that all of July was National Ice Cream Month. So the next thing we're going to look at is the last few of the 13 mind-blowing discoveries that scientists have made in the last 3 years. One of them, number 9, was a new Stonehenge in Brazil. Researchers were using drones and they have identified more than 450 Stonehenge-like stone piles of rocks that look like temples, actually, formations in the remote northwestern part of Brazil. So now we know that there were settlers in South America far earlier than scientists used to think. They thought everything started in Europe, and then they came across the Bering Strait from Alaska and then worked their way down. Now we know that's not true. Well, we know that prehistoric people were using those stone enclosures and that they date back at least 1,000 years before Europeans arrived in the in the 15th and 1600s. The next discovery by scientists is an artificial womb to nurture preemie human babies. That could be a huge breakthrough in treating premature babies. Scientists have successfully built an artificial womb that could keep premature lambs alive and developing normally. The lambs live for 4 weeks inside the device, which looks like an oversized plastic bag filled with synthetic amniotic fluid. The womb one day could help bring human preemies to term so that they could grow and develop and get stronger lungs, and they could go to full term, the 9 months, outside their normal uterus. Number 11, scientists have discovered an 8th continent hidden underneath the Pacific Ocean. It's in the southwest part of the Pacific, partly beneath New Zealand. So what did they name this new continent? Zealandia. Yes. Even though the landmass is 94% underwater, geologists say it meets all the criteria necessary to be recognized as Earth's 8th continent. And we wonder if it will appear in future geography textbooks. Number 12, a tool to repair DNA in embryos. Chinese scientists made a gene editing tool that can eliminate certain disease-causing mutations in the DNA of human embryos. They are already using it now on human embryos. One day it could help prevent babies from inheriting serious genetic diseases. But it does raise some ethical concerns. What about the potential to effectively design your children or alter the genetic heritage of humans? The last one we're going to look at from these mind-blowing scientific discoveries is number 13, a living drug that can kill cancer. There is an immunotherapy drug being developed that turns a patient's own blood cells into cancer killers. It's on the fast track for FDA approval. The treatment was administered already to advanced lymphoma patients who had not responded to standard treatments. At 3 months, 37% of the patients showed no sign of cancer. So they're hoping that this therapy will be the next big step forward in cancer treatment. Imagine that. One of your loved ones or you have cancer and you're able to 3 months later show that you have absolutely no cancer left. Well, let's move on from that. I mentioned that July is ice cream month. So I want to give you a little bit of a history of ice cream. And you think that ice cream has probably originated back to the 2nd century BC, although we have not been able to pinpoint that to anybody in particular. We know that Alexander the Great, scoot my chair here, enjoyed snow and ice flavored with honey and nectar while he was out on his conquering trips. Biblical references show that King Solomon was fond of iced drinks during harvesting. During the Roman Empire, Nero, Claudius Caesar, and he lived from 54 to 86 AD, frequently sent runners into the mountains to get him snow, and then they would flavor it with fruits and juices. Heaven forbid if the snow melted before it got back to Nero's mouth. Over 1,000 years later, Marco Polo returned to Italy from the Far East with a recipe that closely resembled what we now call sherbet. This recipe evolved into ice cream in the 16th century. England seems to have discovered ice cream at the same time, or maybe even earlier than the Italians. Cream ice is how it was first named. Appeared regularly at the table of Charles I during the 17th century. France was introduced to similar frozen desserts in 1553 by the Italian Catherine de' Medici, when she became the wife of Henry II of France. Perhaps it was her ice cream that led him to desire to marry her. It was not until 1660, over 100 years later, that ice cream was made available to the general public. And the Sicilian Procopio introduced a recipe blending milk, cream, butter, and eggs at the first cafe in Paris called Cafe Procope. And what about in the United States? Well, we know there was a letter written about ice cream in 1744 by a guest of Maryland Governor William Bladen. The first advertisement for ice cream appeared in the New York Gazette in May of 1777. President George Washington spent approximately $200 for ice cream during the hot summer of 1790. And when they did inventory on Mount Vernon after Washington's death, they found 2 pewter ice cream pots. Now, President Thomas Jefferson was said to have had a favorite 18-step recipe for an ice cream delicacy that resembled our modern-day baked Alaska. In 1813, Dolly Madison, always the perfect hostess, served a magnificent strawberry ice cream creation at President Madison's second inaugural banquet at the White House. But until 1800, ice cream remained a rare, exotic dessert, mostly enjoyed by the elite. Around 1800, insulated ice houses were invented. And after that, manufacturing ice cream quickly became a profitable industry. So they had steam power, mechanical refrigeration, the homogenizer, electric power and motors, packing machines, and new freezing processes and equipment. And then motorized delivery vehicles. That really changed things up. So today's frozen dairy annual production in the United States is more than 1.6 billion with a B gallons. So you also know that in 1874 they started the soda fountain, which was so popular in our 1940s and 50s. But some people were very critical and said you cannot eat sinfully rich ice cream sodas on Sunday. So ice cream merchants left out the carbonated water and invented the ice cream sundae in the late 1890s. Later, they changed the spelling from S-U-N-D-A-Y to S-U-N-D-A-E to remove any connection with Sundays. It was an edible morale symbol during World War II to the GIs. Each branch of the military tried to outdo the others in serving ice cream to the troops. In 1945, the first floating ice cream parlor was built for sailors in the Western Pacific. And when the war ended and dairy product rationing was lifted, America celebrated the victory with what? Ice cream, of course. 1946, Americans ate over 20 quarts of ice cream per person. Yum. Well, you know, ice cream shops, can you remember any of them? Remember Farrell's in the 1970s and 80s? And they're trying to bring it back where you can go in and what's the main staple? Some kind of ice cream. What's your favorite flavor? Most people say vanilla or chocolate. Strawberry is a close third, but there are so many other kinds, hundreds of flavors, and probably more that we don't even know about. Now I want to give you 11 fun facts about ice cream that you probably don't know. Number 1, how ice cream was introduced, like I said before, is still unclear. We have bits and pieces, but was it Emperor Nero? I don't think so. I think it was around, they usually copied from the Greeks. How about Marco Polo? Was he the first to bring some kind of ice cream to Europe? And if he did, how did he keep it cold? We know he learned about it from the Chinese, who would flavor snow with rice and milk to make a creamy dessert. Number 2, we know that ice cream sundaes were actually made for Sunday. So because the laws forbade ice cream soda owners from selling them on Sundays, they got around the law by serving ice cream soda without the soda. So it was just ice cream and a chocolate sauce or syrup. And that was an alternative to ice cream sodas. Number 3, we know that the waffle cone was totally invented by accident. In 1904, an ice cream vendor ran out of cones. He was at the World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri, and he was facing high demand. Desperate for a solution, he turned to a waffle vendor nearby. Together, they came up with the idea to mold the waffles into cones and serve the ice cream inside. So you've got your cone and you put the ice cream on top, and that's how you ate it. And I think the waffle cone is still one of my favorites. Number 4, we know that America loves ice cream. It is one of the top 3 countries in the entire world to have highest ice cream consumption. Who produces the most ice cream? California, hands down. And what's the favorite flavor? Is it chocolate, Rocky Road, or cookies and cream? No, it really is vanilla. Number 5, the ingredients of the first handwritten ice cream recipe will disgust you. So if you have a weak tummy, you better not listen to this part. Somewhere around 1668, Lady Anne Fanshawe wrote down the first official ice cream recipe. She used to call it icy cream. To prepare the ice cream, the recipe says to boil cream with mace. If that doesn't throw you off, wait till you see what comes next. For flavor, she wrote to use orange flower or ambergris with some sugar. If you don't know what ambergris is, it's basically whale vomit. I don't know what her flavor taste buds were like. I don't know. Occasionally, sperm whales suffer from a buildup in their intestines, which ends up coming up in the form of a vomit-like substance. This is known as ambergris, and in the past, it was used to make things like candles, perfumes, or specialty ice creams. Number 6, which came first, chocolate or vanilla? What do you think? How many of you think vanilla? Raise your hands. How many of you think chocolate? Raise your hand. Well, we think vanilla came first because it's the common base that creates a lot of other flavors. But no, it's not true. It was chocolate. Chocolate came first. Number 7, we know that ice cream used to be a luxury. Only the elite could enjoy it. It wasn't until people could come up with ways for cold storage, like the insulated ice houses, and then later electricity came in, that they could have refrigeration. It wasn't easy to get unless you were super rich. Number 8, there is actually a fruit in Hawaii known as the ice cream fruit. It is Inga fueli. I hope I'm saying that right. Fueli. Locals call it the ice cream bean, and it tastes exactly like vanilla ice cream. It grows on trees in hot climates, and the locals use it in many different ways. Number 9, astronaut ice cream has never really been to outer space. You've probably seen astronaut ice cream in a handful of gift shops. It's basically freeze-dried ice cream, but it's not used on space missions. In fact, it's never been to space at all, although some people think it was on the Apollo 7 mission in 1968. There's only one living astronaut left from that mission, Walter Cunningham, and he says, no, that's not true. Number 10, there's a simple trick to help what we call brain freeze. Have you ever had something really cold and then it immediately gave you a headache? What is it? Well, you have temperature sensors inside your mouth, the roof of your mouth. When cold objects hit it, before your body has time to process and adjust the temperature, your nerves send a message to your brain and signal heat loss, heat loss. So that can bring on a massive headache halfway through eating your ice cream. If you gobble your ice cream too fast and you start to get a little brain freeze, hold your tongue against the roof of your mouth. This will help warm your sensors and get your brain back out of panic mode. Number 11, we know how many licks it takes to get through a scoop. We're just jealous that we weren't the ones who got to test and figure it out. 50 licks will get you through a scoop of yummy, yummy ice cream. All right, well, after that, I'm hungry, but now it's time to get back and continue our trip around the United States. We have been to the northeastern states, New England, and the mid-Atlantic states. We've been down to the deep south and the southern states. Now we're going to look at the Midwest, the Midwestern states. There are 8 states of the Midwest. It accounts for 1/5 of our population. These states include Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Here's a map. This is technically the Midwest. Now, this was the area that was originally settled after the United States broke through the mountains, and Pat Boone was a big part of that. And then they went across the mountains and they started to head west. But we also like to add to that many of the states from the Louisiana Purchase in 1802 by President Thomas Jefferson. So there are other states too. A not so nice fact about the Midwestern states, they are known as Tornado Alley. I'm going to get a drink here on that. If you've ever been in a tornado, they're not much fun. And you know, the kids at school have drills on how to get out of their seats and run to the nearest tornado. What do they call that? Like an underground shelter. Let's look first of all at the cities, because you have to know In our imaginary travel, we have to take a plane because it's still quite a ways away from where we are in California. The biggest place would be Chicago, or the Windy City. It is the largest city in the Midwest. It is the third largest city in the United States. After that, we might go to Cincinnati, the Queen City, with the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. Or we might go to Cleveland, known as the heart of rock and roll. We could go to Detroit, which is known as the Motor City for all the automobiles manufactured there, or Motown, where some of the nation's most popular acts got their start. Indianapolis would be the next one, number 6. Indianapolis is the home of the Indy 500 racing. Kansas City, with its own special barbecue styles, and they hold the national competitions in barbecue. Milwaukee is the brew city with all its famous brews. St. Louis is the gateway city with the Gateway Arch. And then the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. Now there are other places when we're tired of the cities, we might decide we want to go to Cuyahoga Valley National Park. It is along the Cuyahoga River south of Cleveland, and it's one of the busiest parks in the Midwest. Or we might decide we want to go to the Great Lakes. That is called the North Coast of the United States. It's the largest group of freshwater lakes on Earth. We could go to Indiana Dunes National Park, and I'm going to show you some pictures in a little bit. Or to the Mall of America, the country's largest shopping mall. Now, the term Midwest, as I said, is also called the heart or the Rust Belt of America. Why? Because it has so much of our agriculture and industry, historically manufacturing, which is starting to make a comeback in those states. The culture is generally acknowledged to be down to earth, common sense, practical Americans. And they mostly speak English there. And when you go, there's many, many things to do. And I'm going to show you pictures, some of the things we want to try in just a few minutes. I do want to talk a minute about the music. So I do want to cover some of the culture of Midwesterners. The scene of house music was crafted in Chicago in the 1980s and the 1990s. Chicago, St. Louis, and Kansas City have legendary jazz and blues clubs because there was a large migration of Black people out of the South and up towards the North to get industrial jobs. And so they brought their music, the blues and the jazz, with them. Of course, Motown in Detroit is kind of a soft blend of rock and roll. I have to say, that's some of the hottest acts in Las Vegas, even today. What do people eat in these places? Well, it's big cities, small towns, and farming communities. So there's a lot of German food, Irish, Polish, and African American. There's the rural Amish and the Mennonites. Some of the big cities, Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, St. Louis, are known for their bratwurst, kielbasa, Italian sausage, and good old American hot dogs. Smaller rural clusters, like the German Amana colonies in Iowa, are home to some of the best German-American food around. Also, the Amish have brought their old Dutch-German recipes with them. Chicago is such a melting pot of many, many cultures. Parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin still have a Scandinavian influence. And you can get the best Scandinavian pancakes with lingonberry syrup. Oh, that is so good. Spring crops in the Midwest include salad greens, radishes, sweet peas, and spinach. What comes out in the summer? Sweet corn, tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, onions, melons, berries, apples, cherries, peaches, and pears. Such an agricultural abundance. And as I said before, Kansas City is the barbecue mecca. I have a cousin. She and her husband are official barbecue judges in Minnesota for the many barbecue competitions held in that state. And they could tell you a lot about the barbecue championships and award-winning restaurants. Well, after you've eaten your fill, you need something to drink. So beer is a big one. Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis, Miller from Milwaukee, and many microbreweries in the Great Lakes, in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. And wine, did you know? We think of wine as being a California product, but there is wine being made now in every state of the Midwest. Catawba grapes were first discovered in Ohio in 1802. So the Catawba vineyards line the shores and islands of Lake Erie. Michigan and Missouri also have significant wine counties. The Amana colonies, the German ones located in Iowa, is home to 5 wineries featuring their traditional sweet fruit wines. There are also many versions of German and French style wineries, and Iowa is home to almost 90 wineries, many of them featuring the unique flavors of what is called cold climate grapes. The other thing is they want to warn you about firearms. Residents living in the Midwest states are permitted to carry firearms after a full security background check. They take this amendment right very seriously. They use their guns for hunting and defense. Do not walk into property that you don't know, as the people will use their guns for self-defense. You know, I've never seen that warning on any travel log anywhere, but for the Midwest, they take it very, very seriously. Now I've got some beautiful photos to end our time together. 14 top-rated things to do in the Midwest. And of course, the very first one, Mount Rushmore, which was highlighted by our president for a speech and a spectacular fireworks celebration this past 4th of July. And there's also a museum here. This is in South Dakota, and there are carved figures of many of our top presidents. It's supposed to be a beautiful, beautiful place to go visit. And while you're there, you can also visit the sculptor studio to learn about the artists who created the work. You can walk the Presidential Trail to get some of the most majestic views of the park from the Grand View Terrace. Second thing you want to go see, I know we could do this in New England, but in the Midwest, the fall foliage. The Midwest states are blessed with 4 distinct seasons. One of the best times to visit is during the fall. You must go see Marquette, Michigan, that has hundreds of miles of roads through forests that illuminate the fall with colors of red, orange, purple, and brown. The colors are especially beautiful against the backdrop of Lake Superior.